Ladies and gentlemen, today we step into the shadows of Japan's underworld, where power, loyalty, and crime intertwine. The Yakuza, Japan's infamous organized crime syndicate, has operated for centuries, shaping the country's criminal landscape. But who are they? What do they do? And how do they continue to survive in a modern world that increasingly rejects them? Let's take a deep dive inside the dangerous world of the Yakuza. The Yakuza's roots trace back to the early Edo period, 1603 to 1868, a time when Japan was experiencing social and economic shifts. During this period, two distinct groups emerged, both of which would later contribute to the rise of organized crime in Japan, the Tokiya and the Bakudo. The Tokiya were street peddlers who sold goods at markets and fairs. Many of these merchants operated on the fringes of the law, selling stolen, counterfeit, or substandard goods. Over time, these groups organized themselves into structured hierarchies, led by bosses who provided protection to their members in exchange for loyalty and a share of their earnings. Despite their illegal dealings, the Tokiya often played a role in local communities, offering protection to small merchants and ensuring fair trade in their areas. The Bakudo, on the other hand, were professional gamblers. Gambling was illegal in Japan for much of its history, which forced these groups to operate underground. The Bakudo ran illicit gambling dens where they made money by manipulating games and collecting debts. Many of the traditions associated with the modern Yakuza, such as intricate tattoos, irizumi, and the practice of cutting off a finger, yubitsum, as a form of punishment, originated within the Bakudo culture. These gamblers developed their own codes of honor, emphasizing loyalty, secrecy, and unwavering commitment to their bosses. Over time, these groups expanded their influence beyond gambling and street markets. As Japan modernized, they adapted, becoming more structured and engaging in a wider range of activities, including loan sharking, extortion, and organized violence. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, these criminal organizations had transformed into what we now recognize as the Yakuza. During World War II, the Yakuza faced significant challenges as the Japanese government cracked down on criminal activities. Many Yakuza members were arrested or forced into hiding. However, after the war, Japan's economy was in ruins and black market activities flourished. The Yakuza took advantage of the chaos, engaging in illegal trade, smuggling, and protection rackets. By the 1950s and 1960s, they had become a dominant force in Japan's underground economy, with strong ties to political and business elites. Unlike Western mafias, which often operated in secrecy, the Yakuza established themselves as semi-legitimate organizations, with registered offices, business cards, and even known headquarters. They portrayed themselves as organizations that upheld Ninkyo, a chivalrous code of honor, while maintaining a firm grip on Japan's criminal underworld. Some Yakuza families even engaged in philanthropy, providing food and aid to struggling communities to maintain a favorable public image. Despite their claims of being honorable outlaws, the Yakuza's rise was marked by violence, extortion, and deep corruption. Their influence stretched into law enforcement, politics, and the corporate sector, making them one of the most powerful and enduring organized crime syndicates in the world. One of the most unusual aspects of the Yakuza is how openly they operate compared to other organized crime syndicates around the world. Unlike the Italian mafia, the Russian bratva, or the American street gangs that operate largely in secrecy, the Yakuza has historically functioned in the public eye, maintaining registered headquarters, corporate offices, and even publicly available contact information. In Japan, it has long been possible to find Yakuza groups listed in telephone directories, and some members even carry business cards that display their gang affiliation. This level of openness is a stark contrast to how criminal organizations typically function. In many countries, organized crime is synonymous with secrecy, hidden identities, and underground networks. However, the Yakuza has embedded itself so deeply into Japanese society that, for much of its history, it was treated almost like a semi-legitimate institution rather than a purely illegal syndicate. Historically, the Yakuza justified its existence by presenting itself as an organization that maintained order, protected the weak, and enforced its own code of justice. For decades, The Japanese government and law enforcement agencies tolerated their presence, as they often helped control petty crime and maintained a certain balance in the criminal underworld. Yakuza groups acted as power brokers, preventing random street violence by ensuring that all criminal activity flowed through their structured hierarchy. In many cases, the Yakuza has operated in broad daylight, with members openly displaying their affiliations through tattoos, dress codes, and distinct mannerisms. Yakuza members often wear expensive suits, sunglasses, and slicked-back hair, making them easily recognizable. Traditional members, especially the older generation, are known for their elaborate full-body tattoos, irizumi, which they often reveal in private bathhouses or at Yakuza gatherings. These tattoos serve as a symbol of loyalty and commitment to their organization, further reinforcing their identity. Despite their criminal activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, gambling, and money laundering, many Yakuza groups have maintained an unusual level of transparency in their operations. Some organizations publish magazines or newsletters that detail their history, code of conduct, and internal news, giving the public a rare glimpse into their world. These publications often highlight the Yakuza's charitable efforts, portraying them as organizations that provide assistance to the needy, support victims of disasters, and even maintain a sense of justice by punishing those they deem unworthy. Another key factor that allowed the Yakuza to operate openly was their deep-rooted connections with politicians, law enforcement, and major corporations. In the post-war era, Yakuza groups often acted as enforcers for powerful business and political figures, intimidating rivals and securing contracts through illicit means. In exchange for their services, they received protection from prosecution, allowing them to function without fear of law enforcement crackdowns. This relationship between organized crime and authority created a complex web of corruption that persisted for decades. However, while the Yakuza's open operations made them a unique force in the world of organized crime, it also exposed them to increased public scrutiny. As Japanese society evolved and became less tolerant of criminal activity, the Yakuza's visibility began to work against them. The government introduced stricter laws targeting Yakuza-affiliated businesses, freezing their financial assets, and prohibiting legitimate companies from doing business with them. This led to a significant decline in their influence and forced many groups to adopt more covert methods of operation. Despite these changes, the legacy of the Yakuza's open presence remains a defining feature of their history. Their ability to function in plain sight for so long is a testament to how deeply ingrained they were in Japanese society, and it raises important questions about the fine line between organized crime and institutionalized power. At the heart of the Yakuza lies an unwavering code of honor, discipline, and loyalty, principles that define the organization and govern the lives of its members. Unlike many criminal syndicates that operate purely on greed and violence, the Yakuza follows a strict set of rules that dictate how members interact with one another, their bosses, and even the outside world. This code, inspired by ancient samurai traditions and the philosophy of Ninkyo, chivalry, has played a crucial role in shaping the Yakuza's identity and maintaining order within their ranks. One of the most important aspects of the Yakuza code is absolute loyalty to one's superiors. The Yakuza operates under a highly hierarchical structure, similar to the feudal systems of old Japan, where lower-ranking members pledge complete obedience to their leaders. The Oyabun-Kobun relationship is central to this structure, where the Oyabun boss acts as a father figure, providing guidance, protection, and financial support, while the Kobun follower repays this by demonstrating unwavering loyalty and obedience. Betraying one's Oyabun is considered the highest form of dishonor and is often met with severe consequences. To enforce discipline and ensure that every member adheres to the code, the Yakuza employs harsh and sometimes brutal punishments. One of the most well-known forms of punishment is yubitsu, or finger cutting. If a Yakuza member makes a serious mistake or dishonors the group, they may be required to cut off a portion of their little finger and present it to their boss as an apology. The reasoning behind this practice is symbolic. Losing part of a finger weakens a person's grip on a sword, making them more dependent on their Oyabun for protection. Over time, multiple finger segments may be lost, serving as a visible reminder of past transgressions and reinforcing the strict discipline within the group. Another key principle of the Yakuza's code is honor and respect, which extend not only to their own members, but also to rival groups and even the general public. Despite their involvement in illegal activities, Yakuza members often adhere to an old-school sense of morality, avoiding crimes they consider dishonorable, such as petty theft or senseless violence against civilians. In many cases, Yakuza groups have been known to mediate disputes, prevent street crimes in their territories, and even provide financial support to struggling businesses, portraying themselves as protectors rather than mere criminals. Rituals and ceremonies also play a significant role in reinforcing the Yakuza's strict code of honor. One of the most important ceremonies is the Sakazuki ritual, a highly formalized initiation process where new members swear their allegiance to the organization. During this ceremony, the Oyabun and the Koban share cups of sake, symbolizing their bond as father and son. This ritual is deeply rooted in Japanese traditions and solidifies the commitment between the leader and his subordinates. It is not just a symbolic act, it is a binding agreement that requires complete dedication for life. Beyond internal discipline, the Yakuza also enforces a strict code when dealing with outsiders. Unlike Western mafia organizations, where secrecy is a top priority, the Yakuza often operate with a level of transparency, but they expect outsiders to show them proper respect. Disrespecting a Yakuza member, interfering with their business, or betraying their trust can result in swift and brutal retribution. However, despite their reputation for violence, they often prefer resolving conflicts through negotiation rather than reckless bloodshed. Violence is typically reserved as a last resort when diplomacy fails or when their authority is openly challenged. Another unique aspect of the Yakuza's code is their view on family and brotherhood. Many Yakuza members come from broken homes, troubled backgrounds, or impoverished upbringings. The organization provides them with a sense of belonging, structure, and purpose that they may not have found elsewhere. This strong sense of brotherhood creates an unbreakable bond between members, reinforcing the idea that they are part of something larger than themselves. They are expected to prioritize the needs of the group over their own personal interests, often going to extreme lengths to prove their loyalty and commitment. While the Yakuza's strict code of honor has helped them maintain structure and discipline for centuries, it also creates a paradox. On one hand, they portray themselves as noble outlaws with a sense of justice, but on the other, their ruthless enforcement of rules, violent retribution, and involvement in illegal activities contradict the very ideals they claim to uphold. The Yakuza, despite its code of honor and structured hierarchy, thrives on a vast network of criminal enterprises that extend deep into Japan's underground economy. Unlike disorganized street gangs, the Yakuza operates more like a corporate entity, running highly profitable illegal businesses while maintaining influence over legal industries as well. Their activities range from traditional criminal rackets to sophisticated financial crimes, allowing them to generate billions of dollars annually. One of the most well-known criminal operations controlled by the Yakuza is drug trafficking. While the Yakuza traditionally avoided drug dealing due to their own code of conduct, many factions eventually turned to narcotics as a major source of income. They are heavily involved in the distribution of methamphetamine, a drug that gained popularity in Japan during World War II and remains a significant issue today. The Yakuza sources drugs from international cartels, particularly in China and Southeast Asia, smuggling them into Japan and using their network of street-level dealers to distribute them. Though some older generation bosses still view drug dealing as dishonorable, younger factions have embraced it as a necessity for financial survival. Another major criminal enterprise controlled by the Yakuza is illegal gambling. While gambling is heavily restricted in Japan, underground casinos, betting rings, and mahjong parlors operate under the Yakuza's protection. These establishments cater to everyone from low-level gamblers to wealthy businessmen looking to bet large sums. The Yakuza ensures the security of these operations, controlling who can enter, collecting debts, and using violence when necessary to enforce their authority. Additionally, they profit from the manipulation of Japan's legal gambling scene, including pachinko parlors, a massive industry that brings in billions of dollars annually. Many pachinko parlors appear legitimate, but behind the scenes, they are often linked to Yakuza groups who launder money through them. Extortion and protection rackets are another staple of yakuza operations. Small businesses, nightclubs, and even major corporations often find themselves forced to pay protection fees to avoid being targeted. This practice, known as sakaya, is particularly prevalent in Japan's corporate world. Yakuza members buy shares in major companies and then use their influence to extort money from executives by threatening to expose scandals or disrupt shareholder meetings. This allows them to extract millions from legitimate businesses while maintaining a degree of separation from outright illegal activities. The yakuza is also deeply involved in human trafficking and prostitution. They run underground brothels, host clubs, and massage parlors that serve as fronts for the sex trade. Many women, often from Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe, are brought into Japan under false promises of employment, only to be forced into prostitution. The yakuza controls every aspect of these operations, from recruitment and transportation to enforcing brutal discipline on those who try to escape. In addition to traditional prostitution, they are involved in the Fuzoko industry, Japan's legal adult entertainment sector, which includes escort services, hostess clubs, and strip clubs. While these businesses operate within legal loopholes, the yakuza's presence ensures they remain highly profitable while keeping law enforcement at bay. Another powerful tool in the yakuza's criminal empire is money laundering and financial fraud. As Japan's government has increased its crackdown on traditional yakuza activities, many groups have shifted to more sophisticated white-collar crimes. They use legitimate businesses such as construction companies, real estate firms, and stock market investments as fronts to clean their dirty money. Some groups even infiltrate major financial institutions, using their influence to manipulate stocks, engage in insider trading, and commit large-scale fraud. By integrating themselves into Japan's economy, the yakuza ensures a steady flow of income while reducing their exposure to law enforcement. Beyond Japan, the yakuza has international operations, partnering with other criminal organizations worldwide. They have connections with Chinese triads, Russian mafias, and South American drug cartels, facilitating the smuggling of drugs, weapons, and human trafficking across borders. In the United States, they have been linked to organized crime in cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York, engaging in money laundering, cybercrime, and even art smuggling. Their international reach allows them to expand their influence beyond Japan, making them one of the most well-connected crime syndicates in the world. Despite their criminal nature, the yakuza also uses their wealth and power to infiltrate legitimate industries, often blurring the lines between legal and illegal activities. They own stakes in construction firms, nightclubs, and entertainment agencies, giving them a presence in mainstream business. Some groups even have ties to the Japanese film and music industries, funding movies and controlling talent agencies. By maintaining these legal fronts, they continue to exert influence without drawing too much attention from law enforcement. While the yakuza's criminal activities are vast and constantly evolving, their ability to adapt to law enforcement pressure and societal changes has allowed them to maintain their power for centuries. The yakuza is not just a criminal syndicate operating in the shadows. It has long maintained deep-rooted connections with Japan's political and financial sectors. Unlike other organized crime groups that operate strictly outside the law, the yakuza has historically used its power and influence to forge relationships with politicians, corporate executives, and even law enforcement officials. These connections have allowed them to manipulate the system to their advantage, ensuring legal protection, financial growth, and political leverage over decades. Political influence. The yakuza's ties to politics date back to Japan's post-war period, when the country was struggling to rebuild its economy and political stability. During this time, right-wing nationalist groups allied themselves with the yakuza, seeing them as a necessary force to maintain order and suppress leftist movements. Many yakuza bosses identified as staunch nationalists, advocating for a strong Japan free from foreign influence. This ideological alignment with conservative politicians allowed them to become valuable enforcers in political conflicts. One of the most well-known examples of yakuza involvement in politics occurred in the 1960s and 1970s, when they actively worked against labor unions and communist groups. They disrupted protests, intimidated left-wing activists, and ensured that political campaigns supported by their allies went smoothly. In return, politicians turned a blind eye to their criminal activities, allowing them to flourish. Over the years, some Yakuza members even managed to infiltrate politics directly, either by financing political campaigns or by placing their own affiliates in government positions. Through bribery, blackmail, and strategic alliances, they influenced policymaking, particularly in sectors that affected their business operations, such as construction, real estate, and law enforcement policies. Financial influence and corporate ties. Beyond politics, the Yakuza has also established a significant presence in the corporate world. Many of Japan's largest industries, including real estate, construction, and banking, have been linked to Yakuza groups at various points in history. Their method of influence is twofold: direct involvement through front companies and indirect control through extortion and intimidation. One of the most common ways the Yakuza infiltrates the business world is through sakaya, a form of corporate extortion unique to Japan. In this scheme, Yakuza members buy small amounts of stock in major companies, gaining access to shareholder meetings. Once inside, they threaten to expose corporate scandals, embarrassing executives and damaging the company's reputation unless they are paid large sums of money to remain silent. Many corporations, unwilling to risk public humiliation, have historically complied with these demands, funneling money into Yakuza hands. In addition to extortion, the Yakuza also invests heavily in legitimate businesses, using them as fronts for money laundering. Construction firms, entertainment agencies, real estate companies, and even restaurant chains have been used to funnel illegal profits into legal markets. In the 1980s and 1990s, Japan experienced an economic bubble, and the Yakuza capitalized on this by heavily investing in real estate, artificially inflating property values, and making massive profits before the market crashed. Many banks, knowingly or unknowingly, lent money to Yakuza-affiliated companies, further entrenching their influence in the financial sector. The Yakuza's role in the construction industry. One of the most lucrative industries for the Yakuza has been Japan's construction sector. Due to Japan's frequent natural disasters, there is a constant demand for infrastructure rebuilding, which provides ample opportunities for criminal organizations to insert themselves into government-funded projects. Yakuza-affiliated construction firms have secured major contracts for building roads, bridges, and skyscrapers, often using intimidation tactics to outbid legitimate competitors. Their involvement in construction is not just limited to securing contracts. They also control labor unions and supply cheap, unregulated labor to major projects. Many workers, including undocumented immigrants and debt-ridden individuals, find themselves trapped under the Yakuza's control, forced to work in poor conditions with little pay. Ties to the entertainment and media industry. Another surprising sector where the Yakuza holds influence is Japan's entertainment industry. Many talent agencies, modeling companies, and film studios have been linked to Yakuza financing. The Yakuza has historically played a major role in managing Japan's adult entertainment industry, including hostess clubs, strip clubs, and pornography production. They control not just the businesses but also the people working within them, using coercion and threats to ensure compliance. Even mainstream Japanese pop culture has been influenced by the Yakuza. Some well-known actors, musicians, and idols have been connected to Yakuza organizations, either through financial ties or personal relationships. The Yakuza uses these connections to gain respectability, while also ensuring that the media does not portray them in a completely negative light. Blackmail and insider trading. Beyond direct control of industries, the Yakuza also engages in financial crimes such as blackmail, fraud, and insider trading. Because they have deep connections with politicians, law enforcement, and corporate executives, they have access to sensitive information that they can use for financial gain. For example, Yakuza groups have been known to engage in insider trading by obtaining confidential stock market information from corporate insiders. They use this knowledge to manipulate stock prices, making massive profits while staying under the radar. In some cases, they even force company executives to engage in fraudulent financial activities, ensuring they remain dependent on Yakuza protection. Law enforcement corruption and legal protection. One of the most controversial aspects of the Yakuza's influence is its relationship with law enforcement. While the Japanese government has taken a stronger stance against organized crime in recent years, there was a time when police officers and high-ranking officials maintained informal agreements with Yakuza bosses. In the past, some police officers turned a blind eye to Yakuza operations in exchange for information. Yakuza leaders would act as informants, helping law enforcement track down smaller, unorganized criminal elements, such as street gangs and drug dealers. This arrangement allowed the Yakuza to eliminate competition while appearing cooperative with the authorities. Additionally, the Yakuza has historically used bribery and intimidation to ensure that their members avoid long prison sentences. High-profile trials often saw key witnesses mysteriously retract their statements, judges receiving veiled threats, or prosecutors failing to gather enough evidence due to police interference. Impact of government crackdowns. In recent years, the Japanese government has made a concerted effort to sever the Yakuza's ties with politics and business. Anti-Yakuza laws have been introduced, making it illegal for corporations to conduct business with known Yakuza members. Banks are now required to freeze Yakuza-linked accounts, and companies that are found engaging with the Yakuza face severe legal penalties. However, despite these efforts, the Yakuza remains deeply embedded in Japan's political and financial systems. While their influence has diminished, they continue to adapt by shifting to cybercrime, offshore investments, and more discreet methods of exerting control. Their legacy of corruption, power, and manipulation still lingers, making it clear that their impact on Japan's economy and governance is far from over. The Yakuza is not just an organized crime syndicate. It is a tightly knit brotherhood with deep-rooted traditions, rituals, and symbols that reinforce loyalty, hierarchy, and identity. These rituals are inspired by ancient samurai traditions and Shinto beliefs, creating a sense of honor and purpose within the group. From initiation ceremonies to symbolic tattoos and strict disciplinary practices, the Yakuza's customs distinguish them from other criminal organizations and reinforce their commitment to the group. Initiation ceremony, the Sakazuki ritual. One of the most significant rituals in the Yakuza is the Sakazuki ceremony, a formal initiation process that cements an individual's place within the organization. This ritual is deeply rooted in Japanese culture and is similar to a samurai's oath of loyalty. In this ceremony, the Oyabun, boss, and the Kobun, subordinate, share cups of sake in a highly structured manner, symbolizing the formation of a father-son bond. The amount of sake poured into each cup signifies the individual's rank and level of commitment. Higher-ranking members receive larger portions, while new recruits are given smaller amounts. During the Sakazuki ritual, the Kobun pledges absolute loyalty to the Oyabun, vowing to obey his commands without question. This is not just a symbolic gesture. It is a lifelong commitment that cannot be broken without severe consequences. In return, the Oyabun takes on the responsibility of protecting and guiding his subordinates, much like a feudal lord watching over his samurai. Once the sake is consumed, the recruit is officially part of the Yakuza family, bound by its laws and traditions. Symbolism and meaning of Yakuza tattoos. Perhaps the most well-known and visually striking aspect of Yakuza culture is its elaborate full-body tattoos, known as irizumi. These tattoos are not just for decoration. They carry deep symbolic meaning and serve as a badge of identity, marking a person as a committed member of the Yakuza. The process of getting an irizumi tattoo is painful and time-consuming, often requiring hundreds of hours to complete. Unlike modern tattooing techniques, traditional Yakuza tattoos are done by hand using a method called tebari, where ink is manually inserted into the skin with a needle. Each tattoo tells a story, representing the individual's personality, beliefs, and loyalty to the organization. Common motifs include dragons, symbolizing strength, wisdom, and protection, often associated with powerful Yakuza leaders. Tigers, representing courage, ferocity, and the ability to overcome adversity. Samurai, a tribute to the warrior spirit and the Yakuza's deep-rooted connection to samurai traditions. Cherry blossoms, signifying the fleeting nature of life, a reminder of the Yakuza's willingness to die for honor. Koi fish, representing perseverance and determination, reflecting the challenges a Yakuza member must endure. Ironically, in Japanese society, tattoos are heavily stigmatized and associated with criminal activity. Many public places, such as bathhouses, gyms, and swimming pools, ban individuals with tattoos, forcing Yakuza members to keep their ink hidden under clothing. Despite this, Yakuza members wear their tattoos with pride, seeing them as a mark of resilience, commitment, and defiance against social norms. Yubitsume, the ritual of self-punishment. One of the most brutal and well-known Yakuza traditions is Yubitsume, or finger-cutting, which serves as a form of atonement for mistakes, failures, or betrayals. If a Yakuza member disrespects his boss, fails to complete an important task, or wishes to leave the organization, he may be required to cut off the tip of his little finger and present it to his superior as an apology. The act of Yubitsume has deep symbolic meaning. In traditional Japanese sword fighting, the little finger plays a crucial role in gripping the katana. By removing a portion of the finger, the individual weakens his ability to wield a weapon effectively, making him more dependent on his superiors for protection. This physical impairment serves as both a punishment and a constant reminder of his failure. The process of Yubitsume is performed in a solemn manner. The individual places his hand on a clean cloth, uses a sharp blade to sever the tip of his finger, and carefully wraps the detached piece in a cloth before presenting it to his boss. In some cases, multiple offenses may require additional segments of the finger to be removed, with some long-serving members missing several fingers as a testament to their past mistakes. Oaths and sworn allegiances. Yakuza members are bound by strict codes of conduct, which are reinforced through verbal oaths and pledges. These oaths are taken during initiation and at key moments in a member's career within the organization. The most important commitments include absolute loyalty to the Oyabun. Betrayal is considered one of the worst crimes within the Yakuza. Respect for hierarchy. Orders must be followed without question, regardless of personal feelings. Secrecy and discretion. Members are expected to protect the organization's secrets at all costs. Willingness to sacrifice for the group. A true Yakuza member is expected to put the family's needs above his own. These oaths reinforce the idea that joining the Yakuza is not just about committing crimes. It is about becoming part of an ancient brotherhood with its own laws and traditions. Funeral rites and honoring the dead. Yakuza funerals are elaborate affairs, often resembling those of high-ranking officials or dignitaries. When a senior Yakuza member dies, his fellow gang members hold a traditional Buddhist funeral, complete with ceremonial offerings, incense, and prayers. The deceased's contributions to the organization are honored, and elaborate floral arrangements are displayed as a sign of respect. It is also common for rival factions to attend these funerals, even if there is conflict between the deceased and other groups. This reflects the Yakuza's belief in maintaining respect and order within the underworld. In some cases, truce agreements or peace negotiations take place at these ceremonies, demonstrating how deeply tradition is woven into their way of life. Blood oaths and revenge rituals. In extreme cases, when a Yakuza member is killed by a rival gang or an enemy, a revenge ritual is often enacted. This is rooted in the ancient samurai practice of katakuchi, blood revenge, where honor demands retribution for a fallen comrade. While the Yakuza of today prefers financial and political power over open warfare, revenge killings have occurred in the past, particularly during turf wars or betrayals. This sense of vengeance is not taken lightly. Before carrying out an act of revenge, members may perform rituals to purify themselves spiritually, preparing for the possibility that they may not survive the confrontation. These ceremonies often involve fasting, meditation, and paying respects at a shrine to seek the favor of their ancestors before taking action. Modern adaptations of Yakuza rituals. While many of these traditional rituals remain, the modern Yakuza has adapted some practices to align with changing times. Younger generations of Yakuza members may still undergo initiation rituals and tattooing, but fewer are willing to perform Yubitsume or participate in blood oaths. Instead, the focus has shifted towards financial loyalty, demonstrating commitment through business success rather than acts of physical suffering. Lective identity. The Yakuza is known for its rigid hierarchy and strict code of conduct, which demands absolute loyalty, obedience, and discipline. Unlike disorganized criminal gangs, the Yakuza functions with military-like precision, ensuring that all members adhere to the organization's rules. However, when a member disobeys orders, fails to complete a task, or brings dishonor to the group, the punishment can be swift and brutal. The Yakuza has an internal system of discipline that enforces order, eliminates disloyalty, and ensures that every member remains committed to the Syndicate's values. Absolute loyalty and consequences of betrayal. Loyalty is the most important virtue within the Yakuza. A member's allegiance to his Oyabun, boss, is considered sacred, much like the feudal loyalty of samurai to their lords. A betrayal, whether by leaking information, cooperating with law enforcement, or acting against the family's interests, is considered an unforgivable offense. The punishment for disloyalty can range from severe beatings to execution, depending on the severity of the betrayal. In cases where a member is suspected of working with law enforcement, he may face interrogation by higher-ranking members. If found guilty, he could be subjected to physical torture before being permanently removed from the organization. In some instances, traitors are not just expelled but are hunted down and executed to serve as a warning to others. The Yakuza's strict code ensures that few members ever consider turning their backs on the Syndicate. Yubitsume, the ritual of self-mutilation as punishment. One of the most infamous forms of Yakuza punishment is yubitsume, the practice of self-amputation of a finger as an apology for failure or disobedience. If a member makes a serious mistake, such as losing money in a deal, failing to complete an assigned task, or showing disrespect, he may be required to cut off the tip of his little finger and present it to his superior. This act of self-mutilation is deeply symbolic. In traditional Japanese sword fighting, the little finger plays a crucial role in gripping the katana. By removing a portion of the finger, the individual weakens his ability to wield a weapon, making him more vulnerable and dependent on the protection of his oyabun. It is both a punishment and a reminder of his past failure. The process of yubitsume is ritualistic and highly disciplined. The member must perform the act himself, using a sharp knife or blade. He places his hand on a clean cloth, slices through the joint, and wraps the severed piece before presenting it to his boss as a gesture of atonement. In extreme cases, repeated offenses may require additional segments of the finger to be removed, leading to some senior members missing multiple fingers. Though the practice of yubitsume has declined in modern times, some older and more traditional Yakuza families still enforce it as a means of maintaining discipline. It serves as a brutal yet effective reminder that actions have consequences within the organization. Brutal beatings and physical punishments. For less severe infractions, Yakuza members may be subjected to physical punishments instead of yubitsume. These punishments often take the form of violent beatings carried out by fellow members as a form of public humiliation. This is particularly common for members who show disrespect, fail to follow orders, or lose money on a job. A typical punishment might involve the offender being forced to kneel on the floor while his superiors take turns beating him with fists, wooden sticks, or even baseball bats. In some cases, offenders are forced to endure extended physical abuse over several days, reinforcing the importance of obedience. Another method of punishment involves confinement in a dark room where the offender is denied food and water for an extended period. This form of psychological torture is designed to break a member's spirit and remind him of the power his oyabun holds over his life. Expulsion from the organization. In some cases, a Yakuza member's actions may be deemed so dishonorable that he is expelled from the Syndicate entirely. This is known as hamon, and it is considered a fate worse than death for many Yakuza members. Being expelled means losing the protection of the family, cutting off all ties with fellow members, and being blacklisted from any Yakuza-related businesses. Hamon is often accompanied by public shaming, where the expelled member's crimes are announced to the entire organization. He may also be stripped of his tattoos, a deeply humiliating act, as these tattoos represent his identity within the Yakuza. In extreme cases, the expelled member is forcibly tattooed with markings that identify him as a traitor, making it nearly impossible for him to rejoin any criminal organization. Once expelled, a former Yakuza member faces significant difficulties reintegrating into society. Because of his criminal past and severed ties, he may struggle to find legitimate work, and his former allies may actively work against him to prevent him from rebuilding his life. Some expelled members choose to go into hiding, while others attempt to start new lives outside of Japan. Forced suicide, the ultimate price for failure. In the most extreme cases, when a member commits an unforgivable offense, such as betraying the syndicate, stealing from the organization, or failing on an important mission, he may be given only one option: commit seppuku, ritual suicide. This practice, originally associated with samurai warriors, involves the individual taking his own life to restore his honor. The method is brutal. Traditionally, it involves stabbing oneself in the abdomen and slicing from left to right, ensuring a painful and prolonged death. In some cases, a higher-ranking member may serve as the kaishakunin second, beheading the individual after he performs the initial cut to ensure a quicker death. Though forced seppuku is rare in modern times, there have been instances where disgraced yakuza members have chosen to take their own lives rather than face execution or expulsion. This extreme form of punishment underscores the yakuza's deep connection to traditional samurai values, where honor is more important than life itself. Financial and social punishments. Not all yakuza punishments are physical. In many cases, members who fail to perform their duties are subjected to financial penalties instead. A member who loses money in a deal may be required to personally repay the amount, often leading to years of financial servitude within the organization. Additionally, some members are assigned to low-ranking, humiliating tasks as a form of discipline. This could involve cleaning up after senior members, acting as bodyguards with no authority, or being forced to live in substandard conditions as a sign of their disgrace. These punishments serve as a reminder that power and respect within the yakuza must be earned through loyalty and success. Fear as a tool for control. The yakuza's brutal system of discipline ensures that its members remain loyal and obedient at all times. The constant threat of physical punishment, humiliation, or death creates a culture of fear, reinforcing the Oyabun's absolute control. Even those who wish to leave the yakuza often hesitate due to the risks involved. Many fear retribution not just for themselves, but also for their families. To come. The yakuza is not just a criminal organization involved in illegal activities. It is a deeply entrenched part of Japanese society, with extensive connections to politics, business, and even law enforcement. Unlike other crime syndicates that operate in secrecy, the yakuza has historically maintained a visible presence, using its influence to shape policies, protect its interests, and manipulate the economic and political landscape of Japan. Over the decades, the yakuza has built a complex web of alliances, enabling it to operate with a surprising level of protection and power. Political connections, the shadowy hand in government affairs. The yakuza has long maintained connections with politicians, using financial backing, intimidation, and strategic alliances to influence Japan's political landscape. These relationships often serve mutual interests. Politicians receive funding and protection in exchange for turning a blind eye to yakuza activities or passing favorable legislation. One of the yakuza's most well-known methods of exerting political influence is through election meddling. During election campaigns, yakuza groups often provide candidates with financial support, mobilize voters, and intimidate opponents to ensure that their preferred candidates win. In return, these politicians may protect yakuza interests by preventing stricter crackdowns on organized crime or granting access to lucrative government contracts. Historically, Japan's ruling parties, particularly the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, have been accused of maintaining relationships with yakuza organizations. Some politicians have relied on yakuza muscle to silence critics, disrupt opposition rallies, or even engage in violent attacks against political adversaries. This deep-rooted connection between politics and organized crime has made it difficult to completely eradicate the yakuza's influence in government affairs. While Japanese authorities have made efforts to sever these ties, the yakuza's ability to adapt ensures that its political connections remain strong. Instead of directly associating with politicians, modern yakuza groups use front companies and intermediaries to maintain their influence while avoiding public scrutiny. Yakuza in business. Control over legitimate industries. One of the yakuza's most powerful tools is its involvement in legitimate businesses, which serve as both a source of revenue and a means of laundering money from illegal activities. Unlike many other criminal organizations that operate purely underground, the Yakuza has successfully integrated itself into Japan's mainstream economy, controlling industries ranging from real estate and construction to entertainment and finance. Real estate and construction industry. The Yakuza has historically played a significant role in Japan's real estate and construction sectors, particularly during the post-World War II reconstruction and later during Japan's economic boom in the 1980s. Through intimidation tactics, bribery, and insider connections, Yakuza-affiliated firms secure contracts for major infrastructure projects, including highways, office buildings, and government-funded initiatives. One of their most notorious methods is jiege, or forced land acquisition. When developers seek to build new projects, Yakuza groups intimidate or coerce landowners into selling their property at low prices, later selling it at a much higher value. This practice has allowed the Yakuza to amass significant wealth and maintain a foothold in Japan's real estate market. Entertainment and gambling industry. The Yakuza also exerts significant influence over Japan's entertainment industry, particularly in Kabukicho, Tokyo's infamous red light district. Many bars, nightclubs, and hostess clubs are either directly controlled by Yakuza syndicates or forced to pay protection money to operate without interference. Illegal gambling, despite being banned in Japan, continues to thrive under Yakuza management. This includes underground casinos, mahjong parlors, and illegal betting on sumo wrestling and horse racing. Some Yakuza groups even control pachinko parlors, which are technically legal but often serve as a front for money laundering and illicit financial activities. Corporate blackmail and stock market manipulation. The Yakuza has also infiltrated corporate Japan, using a practice known as sakaya, a form of corporate blackmail. Yakuza members acquire small amounts of stock in major corporations, allowing them to attend shareholder meetings. They then threaten to publicly expose damaging information about the company, whether real or fabricated, unless they receive payouts to remain silent. In some cases, Yakuza groups use intimidation tactics to manipulate the stock market, force resignations of corporate executives, or gain insider information for financial gain. This level of control over businesses demonstrates how the Yakuza extends its influence beyond traditional criminal activities into the very fabric of Japan's economic system. Law enforcement and the Yakuza, a complicated relationship. The relationship between Japanese law enforcement and the Yakuza has historically been complicated and controversial. Unlike other crime organizations that operate in secrecy, the Yakuza is semi-legal in Japan, meaning that while their criminal activities are prosecuted, their organizations are not outright banned. This has led to a long-standing understanding between police and Yakuza members, where both sides coexist under unwritten rules. Yakuza as the necessary evil. For decades, some Japanese authorities viewed the Yakuza as a necessary evil, believing that their structured code of conduct and presence in criminal enterprises helped maintain order in the underworld. The Yakuza has been known to keep unorganized crime in check, preventing random street violence and ensuring that other, less disciplined gangs do not create chaos. There have been cases where the Yakuza has cooperated with law enforcement to prevent violent gang wars. During the 1960s and 1970s, when Yakuza turf wars threatened public safety, police worked behind the scenes to negotiate truces between rival factions rather than engage in full-scale crackdowns. This unconventional relationship allowed the Yakuza to operate with relative impunity, provided they did not cause excessive public disorder. Corruption and police complicity. Over the years, there have been multiple cases of police corruption, where law enforcement officials were found to have secret dealings with Yakuza bosses. Some officers accepted bribes in exchange for ignoring illegal activities, while others actively leaked police information to Yakuza groups, warning them about upcoming raids or investigations. One of the most infamous scandals involved high-ranking officers being caught attending social events hosted by Yakuza leaders. Such relationships exposed deep flaws in Japan's law enforcement system and raised concerns about how effectively the government could truly combat organized crime. The crackdown on Yakuza activities. In recent years, Japanese authorities have made stronger efforts to reduce the Yakuza's influence, particularly with the introduction of anti-organized crime laws, such as the Boryokuden Countermeasures Law of 1991. This law placed tighter restrictions on yakuza activities, banning businesses and individuals from having financial transactions with known yakuza members. Since then, police have implemented more aggressive measures, including mass arrests, property seizures, and social exclusion tactics, making it harder for the yakuza to conduct business as openly as before. However, despite these crackdowns, the yakuza has evolved, using more sophisticated financial networks and proxy businesses to continue its operations. While the yakuza is deeply rooted in Japanese society, its operations are not confined to Japan alone. Over the years, the organization has expanded its influence across the world, establishing networks in North America, Europe, Southeast Asia, and even Australia. The yakuza's global reach is driven by its involvement in drug trafficking, human trafficking, arms smuggling, financial crimes, and cybercrime, as well as its ability to forge alliances with other international criminal organizations. Expansion into North America and Europe. The yakuza's presence in North America dates back to the mid-20th century, when Japanese immigrants and business interests provided opportunities for expansion. The organization established ties in cities with large Japanese communities, such as Los Angeles, San Francisco, Honolulu, Vancouver, and New York. In these locations, the yakuza engaged in a variety of illegal enterprises, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and illegal gambling. One of the yakuza's primary operations in North America has been its involvement in the illegal drug trade, particularly methamphetamine. Japan has strict drug laws, making local production and distribution difficult. Instead, the yakuza sources its methamphetamine from international suppliers, often from Mexico's drug cartels or Southeast Asian producers, and smuggles it into Japan through global networks. The United States and Canada serve as key transit points, with shipments moving through organized crime groups connected to the yakuza. In Europe, the yakuza's influence has been more subtle, but no less significant. The organization has been linked to high-end prostitution rings, trafficking Japanese and Southeast Asian women into major cities like London, Paris, and Amsterdam. The yakuza's reach into the European black market has also involved the smuggling of rare artifacts, arms dealing, and even financial crimes, with some syndicates using European banks for money laundering. Southeast Asia, a major hub for yakuza operations. Southeast Asia has become one of the yakuza's primary operational hubs due to its weaker law enforcement, corruption, and strategic location for drug and human trafficking. Countries such as Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam serve as key points for yakuza business dealings, particularly in the sex trade, casino operations, drug smuggling, and weapons trafficking. Sex tourism and human trafficking. The yakuza is heavily involved in human trafficking, particularly in Southeast Asia, where women and young girls are often recruited, sometimes forcefully, and sent to Japan to work in hostess clubs, brothels, or as sex slaves under the yakuza's control. These operations often involve forged travel documents and corrupt immigration officials who allow trafficked individuals to enter Japan without suspicion. In places like Thailand and the Philippines, the yakuza has established deep connections with local criminal networks, making it easy for them to traffic women across borders. Many victims are promised jobs as waitresses, entertainers, or models in Japan, only to be forced into prostitution upon arrival, their passports confiscated to prevent escape. Casino operations and money laundering. Casinos provide an ideal front for the yakuza to launder its illicit earnings. While Japan has only recently legalized limited forms of casino gambling, Southeast Asia has long been home to a thriving casino industry. In countries like Macau, Cambodia, and the Philippines, the yakuza has invested in casinos either directly or through front companies. These casinos allow the syndicate to clean its dirty money, turning illegal profits from drug sales, extortion, and prostitution into seemingly legitimate gambling winnings. The yakuza also engages in loan sharking in these casinos, lending money to gamblers at exorbitant interest rates. Those who fail to pay back their debts may face violent consequences or be forced into criminal activities as repayment. Arms smuggling and black market weapons trade. Due to Japan's strict gun laws, firearms are difficult to obtain within the country. This has led the yakuza to rely on international arms smuggling networks, sourcing weapons from Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and the United States. Black market firearms are smuggled into Japan through ports controlled by corrupt customs officials or hidden in shipments of legal goods. The Yakuza does not just import weapons for its own use, it also serves as a supplier for other criminal organizations worldwide. Through its connections with Russian arms dealers, Chinese triads, and South American cartels, the Yakuza has been able to traffic firearms, explosives, and even military-grade weaponry to various conflict zones and criminal enterprises. Yakuza's financial crimes and cybercrime in the global economy. Beyond traditional smuggling and trafficking operations, the Yakuza has also adapted to the modern financial landscape, becoming heavily involved in cybercrime, stock market manipulation, and cryptocurrency fraud. Money laundering through global banks. To conceal its illegal profits, the Yakuza has developed sophisticated money laundering schemes involving offshore bank accounts, shell companies, and investments in international real estate. Major financial centers such as Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands serve as key locations for Yakuza-affiliated financial crimes. One common method involves real estate investments. Yakuza-linked companies purchase luxury properties in major cities like London, New York, or Dubai, using layers of shell corporations to disguise the true ownership. These properties are later sold at inflated prices, effectively converting illicit money into clean capital. In some cases, the Yakuza has infiltrated legitimate financial institutions, using insider connections to manipulate stock prices or engage in large-scale embezzlement. The group's involvement in corporate blackmail, Sakaya, has also expanded internationally, where Yakuza operatives threaten multinational corporations with exposing scandals unless they receive large payouts. Cybercrime and cryptocurrency fraud. As the world becomes increasingly digital, the Yakuza has adapted by expanding into cybercrime. This includes hacking operations, credit card fraud, identity theft, and online extortion. The rise of cryptocurrency has provided a new avenue for laundering money, as transactions can be conducted anonymously, making it difficult for law enforcement to track illicit funds. The Yakuza has also been linked to ransomware attacks, where hackers infiltrate corporate or government databases and demand large sums of money to restore access. Some experts believe that the Yakuza collaborates with Russian and North Korean cybercriminal groups, exchanging financial expertise for hacking services. Alliances with other criminal organizations. Despite its reputation as a highly independent organization, the Yakuza has formed alliances with other international crime syndicates, including Chinese triads, particularly for drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and financial fraud, Russian mafia, weapons trade, human trafficking, and money laundering, Mexican cartels, drug supply chains, particularly in the methamphetamine trade, Italian mafia, Cosa Nostra, money laundering, and financial crimes. These partnerships allow the Yakuza to expand its reach and adapt to the changing landscape of global organized crime. By working with these groups, the Yakuza ensures a steady supply of illicit goods and services while minimizing risks by outsourcing operations to partners in less regulated regions. The Yakuza has been a dominant force in Japan's criminal underworld for centuries, but in recent years, it has faced unprecedented challenges that have led to a decline in its power and influence. However, while traditional Yakuza groups are shrinking, they are also evolving, adapting to new methods of operation to survive in an increasingly hostile environment. Government crackdowns, shifting social attitudes, financial difficulties, and internal conflicts have all played a role in reshaping the landscape of organized crime in Japan. The crackdown, how the government is targeting the Yakuza. One of the biggest factors in the Yakuza's decline has been the intensification of government crackdowns. Unlike in the past, when the Yakuza operated in the open with relative impunity, modern law enforcement efforts have made it significantly harder for these organizations to function. The turning point came in 1991 with the introduction of the Boryo-Kuden Countermeasures Law, which for the first time imposed strict restrictions on Yakuza activities. Under this law, Yakuza groups were no longer legally recognized entities and were officially labeled as Boryo-Kuden violent groups. This meant that police could target Yakuza businesses, freeze bank accounts, and prosecute members more aggressively. Subsequent laws have made it even more difficult for Yakuza members to operate freely. In 2011, anti-yakuza ordinances were introduced across Japan, forbidding companies and individuals from doing business with known yakuza members. This cut off one of their primary sources of income, legitimate business partnerships. Banks now refuse to open accounts for suspected yakuza members, and even renting an apartment or signing a phone contract has become nearly impossible for those affiliated with the organization. These laws have not only weakened the yakuza's financial power, but have also isolated them from mainstream society. Many former yakuza members struggle to reintegrate into normal life since their criminal records prevent them from finding legal employment. This has led to an increase in yakuza members voluntarily leaving the organization, further contributing to its decline. Financial struggles, the collapse of traditional revenue streams. Historically, the yakuza made vast amounts of money through protection rackets, gambling, sex work, and extortion. However, modern policing and changes in Japanese society have severely disrupted these income sources. Protection rackets and extortion. For decades, the yakuza operated a protection system in which businesses, especially those in nightlife districts, were forced to pay regular fees to ensure their safety. Bars, restaurants, pachinko parlors, and construction companies all contributed to this system. However, increased police surveillance and public awareness campaigns have encouraged businesses to report extortion attempts rather than comply. As a result, many businesses no longer feel the need to pay protection money, cutting off a major revenue stream for the yakuza. Similarly, Sakaya, the practice of corporate blackmail, has been heavily targeted by authorities. Large corporations now have strict anti-yakuza policies, making it much harder for yakuza groups to infiltrate shareholder meetings and extort businesses. Decline of the sex industry and illegal gambling. The yakuza has traditionally controlled hostess clubs, brothels, and illegal gambling dens, but these industries have also faced significant setbacks. The rise of online gambling and digital payment systems has made underground casinos less profitable, while increased police raids have forced many illegal gambling operations to shut down. Japan's increasingly strict laws on human trafficking and prostitution have also limited the yakuza's ability to exploit sex workers. Many of the young women who were once trafficked into Japan from Southeast Asia are now being diverted to other countries with weaker enforcement, such as China and the Philippines. Internal conflicts and splinter groups. Another major factor in the yakuza's decline is internal conflict and fragmentation. The yakuza has never been a single, unified organization. It consists of multiple rival factions, with the largest being the Yamaguchi-gumi, the Sumiyoshi-kai, and the Inagawa-kai. In recent years, tensions within these groups have led to splinter factions and violent power struggles, weakening the organization as a whole. The Yamaguchi-gumi split. One of the most significant events in modern yakuza history was the 2015 split of the Yamaguchi-gumi, Japan's largest yakuza syndicate. A faction of high-ranking members, unhappy with the leadership of boss Kenichi Shinoda, broke away and formed the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi. This triggered a violent turf war between the two factions, leading to assassinations, firebombings, and street clashes across Japan. The conflict continues to this day, further destabilizing the yakuza and making it difficult for them to operate effectively. Police have taken advantage of these internal disputes by arresting key figures and seizing assets, accelerating the decline of the organization. Yakuza's adaptation, shifting to white-collar crime and cybercrime. Despite its decline, the yakuza is not disappearing entirely. It is evolving. As traditional revenue streams dry up, the organization has been shifting towards white-collar crime, cybercrime, and financial fraud to maintain its power. Stock market manipulation and real estate fraud. One of the most lucrative new ventures for the yakuza is stock market manipulation. By infiltrating investment firms and using insider trading tactics, they have found ways to make millions without resorting to traditional criminal activities. The real estate sector is another area where the yakuza has adapted, using fake companies and shell corporations to buy, sell, and manipulate property values. Cybercrime and cryptocurrency scams. The yakuza has also moved into the digital age, engaging in cybercrime, identity theft, and cryptocurrency scams. With the rise of Bitcoin and blockchain technology, The Yakuza has been laundering money through anonymous crypto transactions, making it harder for authorities to track their financial activities. They have also been linked to ransomware attacks, in which hackers lock a company's data and demand payment in cryptocurrency to restore access.